Thanks. I am Heather Ann Ferri, and welcome to my channel. Today, I'm going to talk about your heart remembers trauma. And if you're not familiar with who I am, you can learn more about me at heatherannferri.com. And I have a new book out called Transcending Victim to Goddess, which I'll talk about later. This video is going to have 4 parts. I'm going to first talk about a little bit about my story and experience. I'm going to talk then about science. I'm going to talk then about what you can research as one solution. And then I'm going to give a physical demo of some breath yogic that is related to emotional healing and how it affects blood flow to the heart. So let's begin. And so I want to start out with the idea that when my father passed away in February 2022, I was walking around my neighborhood, avid walker, and I was trying to walk up a hill, and I had to stop several times and place my hand on my chest. I was out of breath. And you hear this term, a broken heart. I felt like my heart was breaking, and it was breaking over the reality that the 44 days that my dad was sick was really hard to watch, being a master healer and knowing, like, working with 8 agent sciences and having the career that I'd had, and then watching sort of what went through with the abuse that he endured, and just watching my brother and my mom going through past lifetime, personality traits, and me trying to navigate to the highest timeline, going to the funeral and having this really clear idea that nobody's really concerned about me. Like, nobody's really asking, how are you doing? Nobody's really paying attention to me. It's almost like I don't exist. And really coming to the truth that me going back into the family system a second time after having left it for 7 years, I was just basically going back into a system that was continuing the same programs, and they really didn't change in the way they viewed me. I was continuing to do my own self-care work while working as a trauma expert and coach. And so there was all of these storylines coming to the forefront. And some will say I had a nervous breakdown. It was more of a spiritual awakening and activation. So when we think about heart attacks, I've met many men who have had heart attacks. My father had a few as well. They study the heart, the muscle, and the blood flow and the diet, but they never go into childhood trauma. They never go into your emotions on a deeper level of behavioral patterns with your wife or husband or family. And so for me, as I was doing these walks and catching my breath and realizing that my legs felt like 1,000 pounds, my nerves were shot. I didn't agree with a lot of what was going on within my family system, how they went about my dad's death, the funeral. My whole way of looking at life and death was very different. And now he's on the other side, and I'm starting to hear his voice clearly, and I'm having to define, where do I go from here with this broken heart? Who am I? What am I going to do? Am I going to continue to ignore what I can't ignore anymore that's right in front of my face? My brother said something to me in the mixed. My brother has said a lot of hurtful things to me over the years that I don't even know if he's conscious of, but it's a programming from past life. And it's not okay. Like, I've been told that I'm really, in the stress of stressful times, every time he makes it very clear that I'm not I'm not family. He's got to take care of his own family. He's got to take care of his own family. It's a very powerful statement to make to your sister. It's very hurtful. But he said, you don't have to be everybody's superhero, in essence. And there was some truth to that, because when you're a child severely abused and you have a pure heart and you want the family to be happy and stay together, you start to change your personality and you start to change your behavioral patterns and your actions, and everything is met by your approval, by how many dance awards, how much can I be in the newspaper? If I go to Broadway, will you love me? If I have a world record, will you love me? If I marry a rich man, will you love me? That type of thing with my mother. And so I'm hitting rock bottom, and all these stories are coming in as my heart, I'm having trouble catching my breath. And I really feel like my heart is not well, and sort of going, what am I going to do with this? I had a toolkit. I was hired all over the world. People flew in 8 hours a day for 2 weeks to work as a trauma expert. My dad's telling me now, throw out some of the toolkit, work with this toolkit. I'm trying to process it all. And it took some time. It takes time. And for me, so, your heart remembers trauma is an important concept, because we really need to value how we feel and how people around us are speaking to us energetically, verbally, and really assessing, is this a toxic environment? Do I need to get out of it to protect my heart, to allow it not to be hurt, injured? But a lot of times when we're having heart attacks and we're having this, we take the pills, we do the physical program, and we keep living until the next disease comes, or the Alzheimer's, and then that's it. We have these programs in the system right now that's just kind of like getting to the surface. That's not what this channel is about. It's about getting to the roots. And that's how we get to a new earth. That's how we get to new businesses. That's how we get to children being born with higher conscious parents that have a love for each other. They're making love, they're unconditional love. And those children are being nurtured with their magical gifts. That's how we get into that realm. We have businesses where people win, everybody wins, not just one person wins. We have systems and leaders that really encourage that the stars of tomorrow are people that are kind and caring and go out of their way of being a good human being, being a human being of character and integrity. These are qualities of a new earth, and a new earth leader and a new earth healer. And so for me, realizing that my heart was not doing well on a physical level and on an emotional, spiritual, mental level, I had to slowly start to decrease my workload, start to listen and navigate. I was just on a podcast interview, and I realized, even in my first Dark Night of the Soul was intense, that was over 15 years ago. But this one, I'm trying to find me and another practitioner, somebody that's got all these sciences and that can engage and touch and all that. And they don't exist in my eyes. But what I did get in essence was the guide was my father. Kind of the last person I thought was going to be that, but he was. And he guided and navigating, don't do this science, do this science. And so I started to trust him, even though I was really, really angry, which dealt with my broken heart. I was angry at how he left me in this world and how he imprinted programs into the family system of how to view me. I was viewed as mentally unstable. I was viewed as maybe immature. I was viewed as, the dreamer, and the truth is, Transcending Victim to Goddess, Part 1. I didn't run from the things that scared me and hurt me. I didn't continue my sugar addiction of eating sugar all day long, like bags of chocolate all day long to numb the memories and the physical pain. Because there was a lot of physical pain, like high end physical pain. So when I think of healing the heart, because the heart remembers, I didn't want to remember the words that my brother spoke whenever there was a crisis, how he would dismiss me. It was an old program. It would only come out during times where I really needed him. And that began, he doesn't see me as family. I can't trust this person. I start to see my family in a different light after my dad's death. I'm somebody that they can use and abuse and mock and talk about, but not support on a deep rooted level the way I would with them. So when you're healing your heart, when you're healing grief and anxiety and depression, any negative emotion is connected to your heart, the heart of your inner child, what was repressed, what was neglected. Starts here. The pieces to the puzzle, you know? I didn't write this to just share my story. I wrote it in the sense to start having you unravel more of you, to be your own spiritual healer, scientist, to grab that pen and notebook and start writing. So I started writing a lot after my dad died, a lot. And then I started channeling. The Divine Mother was always with me since the beginning of when I was born, a pure-hearted soul, fully aware of what was going on until the brain damage, but still fully aware in some ways. And then now, the connection to animals, the sacredness connection to animals and seeing them as messengers and teachers, and then the soil and the water. And then obviously light beings that have been hidden in trees and in the corners of the earth, waiting for a new earth, a new energy that honors the Divine Mother, And so when I think about your heart remembers trauma, even if you don't want to, that's what starts to initiate the dysfunctions of health issues that I will start to talk about on this channel, like diabetes, a big one, PTSD, obesity. And yes, there are fast ways to start solving the first layers of those. But as a New Earth healer leader, we want to live so much longer with agility and with grace. And we can only do that by starting to heal the roots of generational traumas and abuses and not allow them to continue in the systems. So it might surprise people when they see me dance around or when you see me at an event, youthful and young, that yes, there was a point where I couldn't even walk up a hill. And it wasn't because I was out of shape. It was because I was heartbroken And there was a part of me, I think, that little girl that wanted to heal the family. I saw a possibility of that before my dad went into the emergency room. Like it was just like a small little possibility. And then everything shifted paradigms, and it was supposed to be that way. Because the truth is it wasn't my job in the first place to heal anybody. It was my job to be raised in a healthy environment where I could play and be an intuitive and be a magical healer and not be mocked and laughed at and ridiculed. When we abuse children, especially sexually, it is a soul violation. And I take that very seriously. And I hope the New Earth leaders take that very seriously. We cannot brush over soul violations. So your heart remembers trauma. When I talk about the science, here's a couple notes for you. Obviously, there's so much more research coming out now that shows that grief and trauma can trigger a broken heart syndrome, where stress hormones temporarily weaken the heart muscle. PTSD, which I know very well, and chronic stress increase risk of heart disease and stroke, which I know very well because I had many women stroke clients under the age of 60, by up to 40%. The brain heart connection means emotional trauma literally changes heart rhythms. So I'm going to go deep for a moment. I just posted in my last video about the church abuse and how I download this message from my father, forgive and forget basket, and just one article in one state about these girls being sexually abused and the improper way that the church responds, as well as no legal action taking place, which is not acceptable on this channel at Heather Ann Ferri. One thing I do know, having worked with so many women who have amnesia, and really what happens is when you get into breath work and brain meditation work, the body tells the story, not the mind. The mind can lie. The body won't. And being a master, observing it, they'll start to form rashes on their body, in their heart, or on their arm, or on their belly, or they'll start to have a pain, or I can just see it because I can actually see when I look at somebody a lot of their diseases and health issues from generationally or past lives in their field. And then comes the question of, are they ready to remember? Because you can't force that. It's a sacred place. You need to be with a sacred energy to do that. Because it's a soul violation to hurt a child, especially physical violence and sexual abuse. So in that last video, when I was presenting some things, those girls that are forced to touch their predator is creating dyslexia, brain damage, and will shorten their lives, guaranteed. Dr. Garber Monte and Bruce Lipton, there's so many have at least 25 years. We're not even living the way we're supposed to be living, which is many hundred years on Mother Earth. That seems probably foreign to maybe some people, but probably not to my New Earth leaders and healer audience. That's probably not a foreign idea. We're ready for that. So if you're a part of the church, it's important that you become trauma educated and that you protect children. If you're not protecting children, you're not a part of anything. I do not follow churches, and there's a lot of reasons why. The most higher conscious mystical teachings, even if you want to follow Jesus, Jesus wasn't sitting in a church teaching. I had a person who is religious. She actually does my hair. She's a wonderful woman, and she's the only one who I'll let touch my head because that's energy, right? So whoever works with your head and your hair matters. And she went to the Amish community with her husband. She said they don't have churches. They go to somebody's house all day on a Sunday, make meat, food. The kids are playing outside, and that's when they do their rituals. I have yet to hear about abuse or any sort of, I'm sure there can be. Their children definitely have the lowest disease rate. It's an interesting idea, right? So when we have a failed system that is forcing little girls to right away forgive and hug their predator, that's just teaching them not to trust anybody, and that's a lie. We should teach the predator by going through the legal process and having them go to jail for life, because I think when you sexually abuse a child, you should go for jail for life. And you should work in that jail, and all that money goes to their therapies that they're going to need because they're now traumatized. That causes brain damage and all these different issues within the organs. Sad to say, some of these girls have parents that are supporting the predator. I know what that feels like. I know what that feels like when you start to read my journey and I start to break down and disrupt the family matrix, and then a lot of the system matrix in the next books. Because my health matters. My clients' health matters. My community health, I would like it to matter, but we need conscious leaders in order for it to matter. So systematically, we have political leaders, and we have they have these programs from generations of abusing. I'm going to really focus. I know men have been sexually abused too in the church. So maybe I should just say children in general. But I do think there is certain targets in certain tribes on boys, certain targets on girls. And you take away the purity of their heart. And then we wonder why we have a depressed society, a greedy society. And when people preach, forgive a day later, there is no way. And I could bring in what I qualify as the great psychologist and psychiatrists, the people that I follow. We could have a little debate. There's no way that that's possible and be truth, because you haven't even begun to heal what they did to you. You cannot heal it. And especially if your parents are in denial about it and supporting the predator. And I know this because, unfortunately, being a pure-hearted soul, I swept a lot of my stuff under the table because I thought that's what you do. I thought the people around me were decent people, but now I look at them and I don't think so, actually. They don't qualify for me to be decent people. I know that if the roles were reversed and I wasn't educated on trauma, if I loved somebody, I would have bought every trauma book on the shelf. I remember when I met somebody and he was going through a divorce, and I thought this was a person I was going to marry. I read every divorce book of how to parent children who came from divorced families. I read everything to study it. When you love somebody, you do that. You take action. You're involved. And so when I was healing a broken heart after my dad's death, I was writing and writing and writing and writing about the lack of actions, the common phrases that continue to be played out during crises, where it's, you're not family, or you're crazy, or you're over exaggerating, you deal with it. Okay. And so, yeah, we need some higher conscious leaders who aren't traumatized, that can put legal action into play for hurting our children. Because as long as we do what I noted in my last video, we will always have sickness and disease and corruption and greed and violence. Because children you can't lie to your heart. You can't lie about trauma. It is there, and it gets passed down generationally. And because I'm a master, I come from a bloodline that I chose that has deep, powerful, amazing light workers, warriors, spiritual warriors, but tons of severe trauma. And I'm here to set the record straight. I'll spend the rest of my life setting the record straight. Because I can be a voice they couldn't. So I work for the Divine Mother. And she's the only one that I work for. And I absolutely love the Holy Family, but not the way they portray it in the book called the Bible. They don't touch upon, I mean, there's good parts to that book. I'm not saying there aren't good parts, but there's so much missing. And that's my belief system. And what I love when I'm working with trauma clients, because they have a lot of issues with God, they have a lot of issues with different things, is we don't have to go there because we're rewiring and we're healing trauma. And they always have mystical light experiences. Some of them do have Jesus experiences, which is wild, but it's not what was in the textbook. And it's theirs. And it nurtures them to know the difference between right and wrong. If we don't start seeing our children as sacred, light beings that need protection, that's how we get to a new earth. Honoring the mother again, putting her on the highest pedestal. So breath and psychology is the next category. So when you're inhaling and you're working, like say you're taking yoga class, you're working on breath work, which I find, YouTube videos are great, but I found throughout the years that when people are in my classroom or come to me, I don't care if they're yoga instructors, physical therapists, they have a lot of issues within their posture or their body that they don't even realize. So hands-on is ideal, but now that we're in such a Zoom AI reality, I predict that having a physical healer practitioner is going to be very, very expensive because it is the mastery now, and get your notebook. And, because we're living in such a techno society, there's nothing that compares to hands-on. But it takes a lot of energy out on the healer practitioner. And that has not been weighed in properly financially in the sectors of certain fields. So breath and psychology, when you're inhaling, you're activating the sympathetic nervous system, alert, stress response. When you're exhaling, you're activating the parasympathetic nervous system, calm and healing. And this is why breath training matters. It is the number one thing I've done every day from 15 years ago. But 2022, when my father passed away and I had to heal severe generational traumas and then ancestors, you have to be masterful in your breathing to understand, because you're not shaking on the inhale. You're not shaking on the exhale. And it's usually like you got to have when you're inhaling, you've got to have a 20-second inhale, 20-second exhale. Like you've got to train that breath inside and out. I was just on a podcast where I love this gentleman. We were talking beforehand. He was really stressed out. I said, well, let me teach you something. So on the podcast, I go through one nostril breathing. Now, you might have done one nostril breathing for the last 10 years, but is your diaphragm expanding to the possibility that it can, or do you have alignment issues that aren't being addressed? Number one. Two, do you understand what you're looking for when you're training your breath in your own personal psychology? So as you're building on the inhale 10 seconds and on the exhale 10 seconds, and there are tons of breath patterns for different issues, by the way, but that's the basic foundation. Are you aware that the inhale is about receiving, the exhale is about letting go? And so we want to do that every day, because if you're going to work stressed out, family stressed out, trauma from the United States, specifically stressed out, you start to shorten the psoas, the belly gets tight. You start running for the sugar, the alcohol, workaholism. And a couple days can really set you back. So that's why the yogis always did breath work. And I really think in the morning a little bit and at night, if you can do it a little bit throughout the day, you're checking in on your internal system. And it helps you when you do have a lot of conflict not to overreact. Now, so breath work and the psychology of understanding it. So with this book, me and my father created it as a manual with all these questions that you can journal or go to your therapist or your Reiki master or whatever. We've introduced meditations, but it's really about, okay, chapter 1, your roots. Do you know your roots? Start to write them out. Okay, let's do some root chakra physical work, breath work. Okay, we're in this position. I'm moving your alignment of your leg, and now you're starting to feel pain. What's the pain about? Write about it. So you're like on the floor, breathe. Like that's where we start to incorporate 4 or 5 sciences. But it starts here, and it gives you permission, not only to, I've really I'm a storyteller. So there's some interesting stories here of how I get jobs because I'm listening to the meditations. I'm listening to, you're going to work in India. You're going to work in India. Then I get a call about a job in India. You don't get that when you're on sugar and alcohol. You don't get that when you're not doing medical meditations. You don't get that when you don't check in. And so I'm giving you these examples of how the unknown can come in. And when you come from a broken heart, you've lost all security and safety. When I think of those girls that were sexually abused and then forced to forgive in a day by family and the church, I know what's going on. They've lost trust and they're enraged inside. And how is that going to manifest out now? Is that going to be a physical health issue now? Is that going to be, I'm married at 16 and now I have 5 kids and I abuse them, but I don't really want to abuse them, but I'm so angry at the fact that I was forced. You get, this is trauma patterns, trauma reactions. So now we're going to come to some solutions in this video. The first one is hydration and oxygen. You want both of those qualities in the water you drink. So I have a free ebook on my website at heatherannferri.com. You scroll down to the bottom, water matters. You go through it and you figure out, do you have really clean water? Do you need to upgrade your filtration system? And then do you want a medical grade water? Do you want to work with 7 different types of waters? Is that too much for you? Do you just want a medical grade water and keep it simple, have a formula? Hydration. So dehydration reduces blood volume, making the heart work harder. which is interesting because even though I have this great water system that I've been using for 15 years and is the game changer, okay, you get lazy. So one of the things my dad reinforced on the other side is you got to get back to your water protocols, like diligently, disciplined. And that's where the crying, that's where the loosening up of the body. I am more flexible now than I've ever been in my life. Yes. I am anti-aging. Yes. I am saying no to people. Yes. I am attracting in people that see the godness in me. Yes. I value myself. Therefore, I valued the quality of water I'm drinking. Yes. I said no to corporations that created products that don't do what they do and actually put chemicals in our water. So being an activist, being active and supporting Mother Earth, the Divine Mother, also means what you're investing in. Proper hydration supports oxygen delivery and cellular repair. So if you go on my website, you start scrolling around, you're going to see some pictures before and after. It's not an outside makeover. I'm shedding from the inside. I'm alchemizing from the inside, not the outside. And when you look at this cover picture, goddess, born a goddess, victim, you see the trauma. I mean, this is like one of my massive stroke clients when she first came to me. By the way, she recovered 95%. She would have been disabled the rest of her life. You see the face of this. This is a lot of physical pain. This is a lot of brain hardwiring that has to happen. I know what I'm talking about. So pairing water intake with breath work amplifies healing. That's why after a while, I started to really change the way I was working with my trauma clients. 1 hour a week was not going to do it. In fact, there was no results because you're either in a toxic marriage, a toxic family system, a toxic work system, a toxic community. And if you're only spending 1 hour a week, especially in the beginning, when you really need sort of like a lot of tools and you need to sort of like go through some programming to get some confidence, because you're going to be challenged and you're going to be tested. And part of those tests are, I'm going to delete this and then I'm going to delete that. And so then I started working 2 hours a week, 3 hours, three hours a session. And then when people were flying in, 8 hours a day for 2 weeks. And when they left, they were like a whole new person. I've had parents write to me because I talk about in my last, the devil will come in. Oh, the devil will come in many ways. People will resist your healing. So one of the things that my ancestors did as I was healing, and I didn't know I was going to be healing so many, spiritual warriors, but some hardcore stuff, is I started to delete, but I started to understand why I was deleting. I could hear in somebody's text the same patterning, the same words, or in the voice message, the same patterning. I could hear in the voice the anxiety or the lies that they don't even know. And it's like, how many times can you sit across from somebody and it's the same thing? Even if they say sorry and they mean they're sorry, they're not going home to reprogram or to restructure why they're behaving in the first place to you the way they are. That takes work. That takes commitment. That takes love. When you love somebody, like I said earlier on, you research, you like, oh my God, so-and-so's in trouble. I'm going to find out about this stuff so I can assist them. Somebody that's abused, you're like, oh my God, they're always in chronic pain. Let me learn about this water system. Maybe I can buy it for them. I've actually had clients do that. It's really a beautiful thing. I've had several clients have other people who had money because they didn't buy them this is like the medical device is thousands of dollars system. Yeah, the act of love. And then I've seen it unfortunately in my life, the corruption of love, the corruption of money, which I know that I'm in a different, like that's done, but I had to see and learn that to understand how much to disrupt the systems, you have to be in the systems. Somebody that's been successful the whole time might not actually know the answers to why these business systems aren't going to work for the new earth or what needs to be changed. Just like tackling the devil, going through all these different situations, I can see it in people. I can feel it in people. It just is. So that's a tool. Changing the quality of your water and deleting the soda pops, deleting the toxic things at the stores, and getting the highest quality of water starts to purify you. Living water, holy. And I will go into greater detail when I'm doing workshops and events on water protocols. The last thing I'm going to do is a physical demo to the best of my ability of sitting here with what I have. And this just gives you some basics to work with. One nostril breathing. I start out working with people sitting in a chair because the brain work, you're sitting in a chair. So your feet are parallel, which most of the time people aren't sitting parallel. So that's like a whole other work. Even when the foot's slightly turned out, that tells me a whole story because your feet actually tell me more than what's going on up here. So you're sitting up nice and tall, feet are parallel. You're going to place one hand over the belly button. We call it chakra 3. The umbilical cord to mother, the umbilical cord to coming into Mother Earth. And you're going to cover one nostril. Now, I can't do it and talk at the same time. Eventually, I will have a demonstrator, so I can add and teach a lot more online. But you're inhaling and you're expanding this area, the back too. And you're inhaling and we're working on length of breath patterns. So long, deep inhale. You want to hear the breath. So silence is good in the beginning because you want to hear it. Is it stuck? Is it uncomfortable to tune into your own breath? And then you're going to slowly exhale. And when you exhale, everything is coming in muscular-wise to support good posture. So the inhale, you're expanding. You're opening up to receive information about yourself, receive information about your environment. And you're exhaling. You're letting go of energy, of thoughts of the day. You're letting go of what no longer serves you. These are concepts. And so you can pick a number. I'm going to inhale for 8 seconds. I'm going to exhale for 8 seconds. And I'm going to do one nostril breathing for 3 minutes every day. You can add up and then eventually do it for 11 minutes. And it's really important to move to 11 minutes if you have a lot of trauma. Now, when you're opening up the left nostril, we're working on fight flight. So if it's congested all the time, we know some information about your anxiety levels. And this starts to open up for people who have a lot of sleep issues. There's a lot of different medical meditations for sleeping, but we start with one nostril. So then we switch sides. You're going to pick that 8 seconds for inhale, 8 seconds for exhale. Now, what's going on psychologically when you're opening up the right nostril is you're dealing with taking action, mental focus. So I always gave this to my CEOs to do in the morning or before a board meeting, or for my performers to go into the bathroom before they go into their audition and open up the right nostril. So they have two different jobs, and we want to work on both sides, the yin and the yang. But the left nostril is really great to do in the evening because we're trying to relax your central nervous system. The right nostril, we're trying to open up definitely when we've got to be really focused in a meeting or take action, or, and I know this very well, trauma happens, whether it's at home or at work. And if you can, and I have not always succeeded at this, go into the bathroom, go outside, separate yourself, and do long, deep breathing or one nostril breathing through the left nostril to relax your nerves. So you can approach the conflict a little differently. Or wait till the next day for problem solvings, intuitive ideas. I would say long, deep breathing, but you really want to train one nostril to get long, deep breathing. Because when you have anxiety, your body is holding something. It's holding a memory, it's holding an emotional pattern, it's holding situations that you may have blocked 20 years ago. And then they build. And when you start to learn about my life, I've had severe traumas. And, you know, some may say, oh, she's got a lot of bad luck. And I think at one point I thought the devil was following me in life. But at this moment in time, having come through it and transcending to the goddess, I have a lot to give to disrupt and dismantle systems, business as well, to get to a new earth. I knew even, and I'm not going to say it was always easy, because there were times a couple years ago I was arguing with the Divine Mother. She gave me an assignment, and after a while I was arguing with her about it. It was just, I was just being bombarded, and it was so much. But I got through it. And so if you're going through a tough time, I'm sure there's a higher reason why. And just step into this work, even if it's 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day, because we need you. Because if life is really easy right now in this time period, you probably don't have a lot of solutions to what's going on in the money corruption, in the fact that we keep creating businesses in the United States that are old school, like old, you know, that we need whole new educational system with our children. They're coming in telepathic. They remember their past lives. Let's not dumb them down, you know? So if you've come, like you have a lot of trauma right now, get into some of my programs and workshops, because when you can transcend that, you're going to come into some innate gifts within your own, you know, like, so I never saw a very particular person as a healer. Like plumbers are healers if utilized properly. That's why I wanted to get a higher conscious plumber on my water team. And there's so much to that I could lecture on. Taxi drivers are healers. They stay detached. They're taking you to and from a destination without any expectation. And they're trying to create, hopefully, the most calming experience for you. Every job should be trained in healing, in higher consciousness, but it's not. But that's where New Earth leaders don't see the systems. Like we can complain that they're crumbling. The problem is I don't know if we have the imagination and the creativity and the healing of generational traumas to create new businesses and new franchise blueprints. That's where I come in. That's part of many things that I'm passionate about. So your heart remembers trauma. And so if you're catching yourself out of breath or you're grieving or your anxiety, one nostril breathing is where you're going to start. 3 minutes every day. Work up to 11 minutes every day. You're like 22 minutes on one nostril breathing. Yes. Then we go to the next layer. You know what I mean? So that's the first thing. So long, deep breathing, you check in on breathing in and out as you're training one nostril breath. So now we're going to use that long, deep breathing with some basic movements, because when the breath shortens and tightens, that means we're not getting blood flow to the thymus gland, the thyroid gland. We're not getting blood flow properly to the heart. We're not getting blood flow to the voice, to the brain. So how we're exercising matters, and that's my passion. I know that well from all the certifications and dance, and like that is it. And it's not being trained in a way of understanding breath and psychology with body language and body movement. The body never lies. You know, Martha Graham used to say, you can tell who somebody is by just the way they walk in a room. And that is very true. So, neck rolls. How do we get blood circulation in the neck? Well, I know that area very well. I've had to heal that. If you've seen some of my videos like the water dance, where I have had all these rashes from generations of being masked up and abused. So I'm going to place one hand here to remind you, but I let the head release. I'm trying to get the chin to the chest to open up the vertebrae in the back, the upper neck. I'm going to do a figure 8, my dad's favorite symbol. So you're going to inhale. And then when you come to the center, exhale. The yin yang. Inhale. And exhale. Inhale. And exhale. Now my hand is here to make sure my belly's moving. If it's not moving, we got to get it to move. Inhale, it expands. Exhale, it pulls in. Then you reverse it. So chin to the chest. Inhale. And exhale. Inhale. And exhale. So you can pick a number 3 times each way, 4 times each way. You can also stretch the neck by using your hand, letting the shoulder relax. Inhale, and then exhale. Push your head up against the hand, and then release. Start stretching this area. So you can do the other side. Inhale. And as I exhale, I'm pushing against the hand, and then I let it release, that resistance to stretch it more. People are very tight here. Women in particular are very tight here. If I was training a group of women for public speaking, something that I'm passionate about, I would actually utilize a medical meditation 5th chakra Kundalini yoga set that works on breath patterns within the neck and the belly being where the voice, the true authentic voice, comes from. So I've done some trainings for professional speaking and disagree with the way women are being trained. They're being trained as robots, basically, you know. And it's okay to have AI help you with some things in your writing, but not to write everything, and not for it to be some sort of thing that, okay, this is what everybody wants to hear. When do we come into the authentic, divine feminine speaking? How does she tap into the truth of what she wants to speak about? Well, she's going to have to heal some trauma. And so I think that coaching of professional speaking for women should be partly based on healing trauma within the belly, the way the voice comes, and the throat. I have a whole thing, I didn't pull it up right now, on issues. I've spoken about this before, but I'll bring it up in a video coming up soon. Hopefully. I wish I had an assistant. I'm manifesting an assistant right now. But it's on the stats. We should be very concerned. If you're a leader in the United States and you're concerned, you should be concerned about what's going on right now. You know, Innovation Women, it's a great organization. It's been around, and they really succeed in trying to help women speak professionally, get paid. And I read their newsletter, obviously, and they're always factual. And they were just presenting this one organization in a year paid 64 speakers. Okay. How many of them were women? Guess in the comments below, and I'll let you know. It's not a good number. And so there you go, in the sense of, are we living in a man's world? Really? You know, because we're being trained by men to be robots, to speak about certain topics. We're being trained, like we're totally losing a lot of stuff of that yin and yang. That's so vital. When I think of those girls that were shut up at the church with their families, or with the system, or with the fact that the police, like nobody involved this legally. What do you think that's teaching them about their voice? Their voice doesn't matter. Some of them were screaming in the car. Their voice doesn't matter. There's nothing holy about that, and we keep hearing it over and over again. I heard about it locally. It's not in a newspaper, but I heard about it locally. And it is, sometimes it's wrapped around a lot of money too. This one was. So after you're working on the neck, shoulders. This was really hard for a lot of people in the medical field to do, connecting proper breath. When you inhale, the shoulders up to the ears, the belly's going out. And when you exhale, the blood is going up to the heart, thyroid, and brain. A lot of people can't coordinate that at first. You're pumping blood. You're not just moving the shoulders. You're working on the internal nervous system, third chakra. So there's an interconnection between the lower foundation and the higher foundation. So we work on that. Then we work on one shoulder, the other shoulder. We see if you have any pain, if one's tighter and it can't go this high to the ear. And then we do a twist where you inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Now I can move, I have mobility. You might only be able to move this much, and that's okay. But that shows you how tight you are in this area. And that means lack of blood flow. It's all about blood flow. It's not just about flexibility. It's about breath, oxygen, water, oxygen, oxygen. How we're utilizing breath with movement. So you have inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. And that movement I would do 10 times. You're now going to start to get energized. This preps me for my meditations. This preps me for when I'm going to go into another type of workout for myself, but I'm always doing this every day because this gets tight. Sitting and writing, sitting at a desk, doing interviews, teaching, it gets tight. Shoulder, spinal movements. Oh, it's so important. When I started working with Alzheimer's, I understood that a flexible back is a flexible mind. And I mean the middle part of your back. So if it is stiff, The spinal fluid is not getting to the brain properly. So with that breath, we're inhaling the chest forward, shoulder blades coming together, the angel wings, we exhale, belly goes in as we curl and make a C. Hands don't move. You put them on the lap, but they don't do this dance. The dance is in the breath and in the torso. Inhale, exhale is one set. You're going to do it 26 times. That really starts to open things up and people feel really great. This takes about, 8 to 10 minutes. It's foundational. And then we build upon that. There's one more I'm going to share. I do it standing. I do it with sometimes a rubber baseball bat for anger management release. I do it with different sounds, especially with women. But I'll give you a little bit of it today. It's kind of like chopping wood. Your hands are coming together. If you are a female, your left thumb is on top. If you are a male, your right thumb is on top. And that's because this is the masculine side, this is the feminine side, and mom has both. Like, we both have both, but you have to understand that I'm healing the shadow masculine. That means I'm healing that restriction, that control that then opens up the flexibility and blood flow of the feminine. So when I'm working with people, I can really see, even if they don't understand either mom or dad or in their lineage, those issues, right? It comes out in the body. So we're here, it's kind of like chopping wood, and this is great to do standing in different postures, but I'm just going to sit right now. I inhale up, I exhale down. Now you saw my belly go in, that's shooting blood up, and I'm exhaling with the intention of letting go of stress, letting go of a negative idea. So I'm chopping it away. But then we can use sound, Sanskrit. I'm not going to do that today, but it gives you an introduction. That's probably when I did those in workshops, in my yoga workshops with the baseball bat, and I could see people, because of my energy as a healer and then getting them chanting, they would just start to shake because they had so much internal rage stored in them. And I was giving them a healthy tool to connect, to release it. And then sometimes the memories to help write it out and understand the psychology of, why did it have to be stored in the first place? Oh, you weren't allowed to speak about these things in your family. Or, oh, you were shut down a lot by your boss at work. Or, oh, your husband wrote off certain subject matters in your relationship. You get the idea? Getting to the roots really helps us be able to actually become something different. Not forgetting, but just saying, okay, this is why this was happening all the time in these patterns. I understand now the roots of it. I've healed all of that. That's in my library, but now I'm creating a new library, and it's going to have this, this, and this. Okay. So finishing up this long video. So if you're interested in my new book on Amazon, Transcending Victim to Victory, Victim to Goddess, that supports the channel, that supports you. And I share 3 breath exercises with psychology. I share 133 questions. I share medical meditations, and I share sacred stories about my journey. And so that's one tool. And how do I want to finish this? Also, you can get on my mailing list at youmatter108@gmail.com for future events, Zooms. There are podcast hosts. If you're a podcast host, I'd love to be on your show if things that I do resonate with you and your audience. But I'm also starting to collaborate with business owners in 2-hour Zoom workshops in one of the sciences that you feel would meet your audience at the place that they're at and the channel that you're working on. Also, just to get on my mailing list about future books, future retreats, and obviously, if you want to work private with me and have a deeper transformation. So, one of the messages that I send to you is that your journey, you can do this alone, you know, but you don't have to. You can have a guide. And if you resonate with my energy and my psychology, we can see if we're a fit. So you matter 108@gmail.com. Thank you so much. If you thought this video was helpful, share it with somebody, subscribe, and more to come. Many blessings.